On ABC Radio Melbourne, 1300 222 774, our number. Now, we tend to associate rugby union with private schools, but that isn't necessarily where there are different programs being run. Trying to introduce rugby union into other schools, especially state schools. Jim Orange is a founder of the Academy Movement and joins us on the program this afternoon. Hello, Jim.
Yeah, Trevor, how are you, mate?
I'm really well, because we do tend to associate rugby union, or just rugby, if you want to use the correct term, with private schools.
Yeah, it's probably a misconception. I think traditionally in Australia, that's been the case, mostly in the northern suburbs. But rugby union's been played in Victoria for 120 odd years at clubs, mostly made up of public school kids on a Saturday. But it's a bit of a contrast to what I'm used to growing up in New Zealand, where we play all of our sports for our school, where you go to public or private, whether that's cricket or basketball or soccer or whatever. But obviously rugby's religion back home, and I'm glad you said rugby union is rugby, because that's the correct term. But yeah, it's a misconception, I suppose.
I've had a smack more than once or twice concerning rugby and rugby league, so I'm well aware of that. Why do you think it's good to actually bring it into state schools?
I mean, the schools that I mostly work with and have always taught at have tended to be in lower socioeconomic areas. And there's big pockets in Melbourne, the big suburbs of Melbourne, full of young Māori and Pacifica students. And if you come from a New Zealand background, a Māori background, a Samoan background, a Tongan background, rugby union is actually your game. Rugby league tends to be something that was more adopted when people came over to Australia, particularly up there in sort of Western Sydney and whatnot. But when you talk about some of the kids that I've coached over the years and have in school, I've had 15-year-olds that are 6'8" and 120 kilos and can run pretty quick as well. They're just built for rugby, so there's so much talent there, untapped talent, particularly in Victoria. And I guess what we've teamed that up with is one of the values of rugby union, which has always been around, which is around respect and education, because the academies we set up in schools are there first and foremost for student outcomes and engagement.
Jimmy, have you found that kids are keen to play? Because basketball is incredibly popular, football is incredibly popular, this is AFL, and also then with soccer as well. So is it crowded in that area? There's definitely crowding in different popularities in sports, but when you're presented with a genuine pathway in rugby, and it tends to be what most kids have grown up playing from those backgrounds, and also their parents, their grandparents, as far back as you can remember, it's ingrained in people from that background. Not to mention there's a ton of South Africans living here and English and even just Australians and Victorians that have always been rugby families. It's a truly international sport, and so we do get good participation and leading into a World Cup in 3 years, which Australia's hosting. It's an exciting time for rugby, for the fans at least. Oh, it is, and Australia's got a particularly good rugby side as well, and has been traditionally for a long period of time. However, at a local level, as far as high level of rugby is concerned, and especially with the Rebels, how significant are the Rebels as far as the continuation or a pathway or a recognition for kids?
It's massive. I moved here in 2010 and there was no Rebels, and I was coaching rugby at the school. I was teaching it at the time. And when they came to town, there was just that little bit extra, we've finally got a rugby team here, a professional rugby team. And in that time, since I started my first academy as a teacher in 2015, there's something like 40% of the squad is now made up of local born and bred Victorians. The recent John Eales medalist, who plays for the ACT Brumbies, his name's Rob Valentini. He went to Westall Secondary College. He's Victorian born and bred and one of the best players in the world. There's absolutely the talent here, but for my caddies and my kids, our Rebels logo's on their uniform. It's that sense of pride, like they dream of either being a Melbourne Rebel, a female or male player, maybe a Wallaby or Wallaroo one day, but also we're giving them pathways to working behind the scenes and meet physios and CEOs and everything else that are associated with professional organisations.
Look, and I've got a text here that says, Trev, Sri Lankans are really big into rugby union as well. They have a 28-team competition. So having rugby in state schools is a brilliant idea. Look, Jimmy, thank you. And it points out that there are places and there are needs for all sorts of sports to be within communities and the important role that they play. Thank you very much for telling us a little bit about it this afternoon.
No worries, Trevor. Thanks for that.
Thanks very much. Jimmy Orange, who's the founder of the Academy Movement, which takes a look at the integration of rugby union more into Australian schools. Afternoon.